So I'm sure many of you have been reading the news recently about millionaire and billionaire group chats and also political group chats, mainly on Signal. So we saw recently, of course, that Signal chat included many high ranking members of the US government, including Vice President JD Vance, talking about basically destroying a building in Yemen and killing a lot of people, including civilians. And you'd had JD Vance talking about saying prayers for victory, getting the prayer emoji reaction. You have like all these other emojis in the group chat, prayers, biceps, American flags, everyone congratulating each other. And then recently, we had a new report about very rich people all in group chats, because you might have seen this going viral, a screenshot of a David Sachs group chat that the group has become worthless since the loudest voices have trumped derangement syndrome. Eric Turenberg, you should create a new one with just smart people. David Sachs left the group, and then Brian Goldberg writes, I'm not sure we have Trump derangement syndrome. I think we're Republicans who supported Trump, and we're seeing that is a failed administration, with Tucker Carlson and Tyler Winklevoss leaving the group after that. So I find this topic so fascinating. For a lot of us, it's a rare glimpse into how these very, very powerful people talk to each other in a less formal way than what we're used to. And also for a lot of us who've grown up in a certain generation in like work culture, everything you did was email. And with email, there's kind of like the knowledge that like this can be forwarded to someone, or there's a massive record of this going back. So there was a more formal email etiquette, which isn't really present in group chats. And when you combine the informal nature of a group chat with these people's knowledge that that chat will then be deleted later, it really reveals a lot about who these people really are. Unfortunately for them, a fair few of these have been leaked, so we actually get a glimpse into these people. But also, I guess for me personally, when you think about all these rich people, you don't think about them all in like WhatsApp groups together, just like spamming each other with memes and commentary. Because as I've said before, we've all been brainwashed to think that like very wealthy, successful people are like really mature. And even if they're evil, they're like very cold, calculating, very intelligent. But when you read these like group chats things, you're just like, they're all they're all fucking idiots, and they're all really immature. So I want to talk about this today. I want to talk about the psychology of group chats, and I wanted to talk about how our world is essentially being run by group chats. And that was the most disturbing revelation of the Signal chat on the Yemen strike, of how much people's lives are being decided by instant messenger, where people don't really give much of a second thought to what they're writing or what they're even confirming, and how that drastically impacts so many people's lives, including, of course, people actually being killed by the US military. So all of that coming up for you today. I just want to shout something out. My girlfriend Holly is running a half marathon, and she's doing it for medical aid for Palestinians. Thanks so much to everyone who's donated. We already hit the £500 goal. Let's keep going. If you haven't already, check it out. We already did a fundraiser at the end of last year for medical aid for Palestinians. If you haven't checked it out, check it out, and let's support Holly with her run. And thank you so much to everyone who's been so kind to give a lot of money already. I really appreciate it, and Holly does as well. So I have already touched on it briefly about how the psychology of being in a group chat is very different from email culture. Now, I'm 29, so of course, I don't really have much of a memory where instant messenger wasn't a thing since I've been on the internet. If you guys don't remember, on Facebook, they didn't actually used to be a messenger. They didn't even used to be a direct messenger. So in a really unhinged way, if you wanted to message people, you'd post on their Facebook wall. So everyone could see what you're writing, but sometimes we just use it as a messenger that everyone could see. It was really bizarre. Of course, we were like 12 and 13 or whatever. But then eventually a messenger was introduced. I remember using it. And then about, I don't know what date specifically, about 2015 or 2016, they added the ability to add loads of people to group chats. And they launched Facebook Messenger as like its separate own app from Facebook. And I remember at university having loads of group chats on Facebook Messenger, but not when I started university, not in 2014. It was more in like second and third year. I started being part of like group chats with like 20 other people or something like that. And it's a very different dynamic, because depending on the context of the group chat, there's a different vibe, and you act in a different way, because at the end of the day, there's so many people reading your messages, and everyone in every group chat has a different personality. Are you the lurker who reads every single message but never responds, even if someone is actually tagging you to respond? That's what I hate the most, actually. When I'm in a group chat and I actually need to know something, or maybe I've invited people to something, and I see that the person has read the message, but because of the group chat format, they feel like they don't have to respond, which is the really most bizarre thing about group chats, just as a little tangent, is that because of the group environment, you feel like you don't have to reply to something I've wrote to you in that environment, because like other people can see it too and maybe like respond for you. I don't even understand the dynamic there, but it is very interesting. And also a blind spot for me, which people won't be able to relate to. I am not in many group chats where I don't actually like the people in it, because like I said, when I used to work, we didn't really have group chats. We had just email. Like group chat existed, but we didn't communicate on it because it was seen as unprofessional. And then all my group chats now at the moment are family, couple ones with different friends, and then I have like so many football group chats, and they're just basically people saying organising tonight's game, or maybe I'm in a group chat with people I don't really play with, just to keep tabs on it and see maybe one day if I'll pop up and play with them or whatever. But my blind spot is I don't really understand the power dynamics when you're in a group chat that is more confrontational, and that's what's been so fascinating about researching this video about group chats where very wealthy and egotistical people are all in there talking about things like politics or philosophy or talking about business, but they're not all talking about it as friends necessarily. There's people who are more like happy to participate. There are people who just lurk. There are people who argue. And there are people who dominate the group chats with their contrarian political commentary. And if you can relate to this in any way, let me know if you've been in group chats that have been like taking over or have gone weirdly right wing or anything like that, because I can't relate to it. But I find it very interesting, the move away from direct messages to each other to this group format for just a lot of different things, whether that be organizing military strikes on Yemen or just talking about random different things. Now let's talk about everything in a more serious context. So of course, you would have seen this because Pete Hegseth has been caught in another Signal chat that's been leaked. So The Guardian reporting on Monday, 21st of April, 2025. So pressure was mounting on the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on Monday following the reports of a second Signal chat room used to discuss sensitive military operations. The New York Times reported that Hegseth shared details of a US attack on Yemeni Houthi rebels last month in a second Signal chat that he created himself that included his wife, his brother, and a dozen other people. The Guardian has independently confirmed the existence of his own private chat. According to unnamed sources familiar with the chat who spoke to the Times, he sent the private group of his personal associates some of the same information about the attack, including the flight schedules of the Hornet jets that would strike the rebel targets in Yemen, but he also shared with another Signal group of top officials that was created by Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor. And of course, we know about all of this because an Atlantic journalist was actually added to the group chat with all of these top players in the Trump government. And I just want to talk about it because I actually have all the screenshots here of their chat. You've probably seen them anyway. But the one thing I will say, as interesting as it is to get a peek behind the curtain, I wrote my history dissertation and my master's thesis on different US government's foreign policy. And if you go back far enough, a lot of it has been released. So you can actually read a lot of transcripts of conversations between like Nixon and his top advisors, even Jimmy Carter. Not so much with like more recent presidents, even going back to George Bush Sr. But reading all this stuff wasn't a shock to me because I have actually read a lot of US administrations talk like this to each other in a transcript because I've had to study this stuff and like read these archives and everything. But the more dystopian angle to it is just the group chat format where they're all like egging each other on and celebrating the success of like killing people in a foreign country. And I guess how much humanity is removed from it, because in the conversations I've read before with like say Nixon and his advisors, it's like, we are going to do these things, but let's have a debate about it and maybe it will happen in the future. Here we're looking at something that's an instant messenger. So they're reacting in real time to the US military killing people overseas. It's called the Houthi PC Small Group. It had 19 members. And it was really interesting, just like those archives, because you do have here JD Vance saying he doesn't want to do it because he thinks it just looks bad to the public. It's inconsistent with the messaging on Ukraine and NATO. He talks about that like only 3% of US trade comes from the Suez Canal. So why are we even doing this? And then you have Pete Hegseth basically telling him why they should do it, and JD Vance saying he's willing to do it if everyone else wants to do it. Obviously, I know from my studies that vice presidents aren't the people who oversee foreign policy for the president. It still feels kind of weird. And also he says to Pete Hegseth, if you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again. And also what's good about this is making it clear about like US imperialism. He also writes, let's just make sure our messaging is tight here. And if there are things we can do up front to minimize the risk to Saudi oil facilities, we should do it. I mean, that and protecting Israel are like the two major goals of US foreign policy in the Middle East. And then Pete Hegseth replies, VP, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's, all caps, pathetic. So then Pete Hegseth, he drops all the details of what's going to happen and what time it's going to happen. And then JD Vance says, I will say a prayer for victory, with 2 prayer emojis of other people in the chat reacting. Like that's why this feels so gross and dystopian. Like all the stuff you do in your group chats with your friends when you're talking about the latest football game, talking about what you did on a night out, they're all doing it, but it's about just killing some of the poorest people on earth. So Michael Waltz then chimes in saying, VP, building collapsed, had multiple positive IDs. Amazing job. And JD Vance writes, because he doesn't understand, what? Waltz saying, typing too fast. The first target, their top missile guy, we had a positive idea of him walking into his girlfriend's building, and now it's collapsed. Excellent. So there are these people, maybe eating lunch, maybe in the bathroom, are texting each other about destroying an entire building and killing loads of civilians along with one of their top targets in the Yemen government or whatever, right? And then you get all the reactions here. Good job, Pete, and your team. Great work all. Powerful start. Kudos to all. And then Steve Witkoff putting prayer emojis in the American flag. Great work and effects. So obviously that is the US government. And like I said, a lot of that chat isn't unique to them, but how instantaneous it is, how they're typing like live reactions to destroying a whole building full of people that are all going to die, and how it's just like, you know, I'm randomly just going to send a message to a guy on my lunch break about how I'm about to kill loads of people. And they're all like, great, well done, emoji, emoji. Just how like normal it feels, unprofessional it feels, and just how like all these conversations are going on in a group chat that resembles group chats that all of us have. I don't know about you, it's just so dystopian to me, and it just feels like it's not real, because like I said, even with the billionaire stuff, with the government, we think they're all professionals. They're all going to take this really seriously. They're all going to be in a room together, talking this over and talking about the pros and the cons. It's going to be like that scene in Oppenheimer where they talk about dropping the atom bomb, right? They're all like having a debate about it. They're all taking it very seriously. And then you have it here where they're all like putting emojis to each other and all loving that they just killed a bunch of people and just completely not even seeing them as real people. And it's like not even seeing the world as a real thing. It's like it literally just exists through like your social media feed and Signal group chats. So yeah, honestly, like really sick shit. But it was an interesting window into how the world is actually run and how little human life actually means to the psychos in power. Like, I'm sure there are group chats in many nation governments just like this. We saw this a lot of COVID actually in the UK, where they had COVID inquiries. And then, of course, when they're like to the Tory government, can I see your WhatsApp logs? Oh no, they've all been deleted. That happened so many times that all these chats, where all these people were probably talking about all the deaths that they were causing through their management of the pandemic, they were all mysteriously gone because it would probably make them look as bad as the people here. Moving on to the ultra wealthy in group chats, I found this interesting because I remember when Elon Musk was going through the process of being forced to basically buy Twitter because he tried to back out, during the legal proceedings, a lot of text messages were released between Elon Musk and loads of people. What was really interesting is just to see how the wealthy like suck up to each other and how they just talk to each other. It's just something we never really get to see. So here's another interesting one. They're doing this all on Signal as well, like Pete Hegseth, I believe. So Elon Musk wrote to Jared Birchall, and I think he's in a chat with Larry Ellison. And he says, Larry Ellison is interested in being part of the Twitter take private. And he says, roughly what dollar size? Not holding you to anything, but the deal is oversubscribed, so I have to reduce or kick out some participants. Larry Ellison writing back, $1 billion, or whatever you recommend. And Jared Birchall, Elon's fixer, liking this. Elon saying, whatever works for you, I recommend maybe 2 billion or more. This has very high potential, and I'd rather have you than anyone else. Larry saying, I agree that it has huge potential and it would be lots of fun. Elon writing, absolutely, smiley face. So obviously that might not be that interesting to people compared to some of the other stuff we're talking about today, but I still find it interesting that like the fate of so much of our world is decided by really, really rich men just texting people in group chats like, yeah, wanna throw in 2 bill to help me take over Twitter. Smiley face emoji. Like, it's just so informal, and it just feels like it really helps. If I'm going to get a bit serious, it really helps people make very impulsive decisions very, very quickly and without people even thinking things through. And on that note, Semaphore had a really good article by Ben Smith, which you would have seen going viral because I showed you that little snapshot of the people leaving the group chat. And it's called The Group Chats That Changed America. So it's a long one. I'm not going to read all of it because I'd say you should go read this article for yourself just to like reward this like really good piece of journalism and just how much it uncovers the depressing nature of the rich takeover of the world. I'll give you a bit of the rundown. This all focuses on Mark Andreessen. You might have seen him on the Joe Rogan podcast like 6 months ago. I don't really know him that well, apart from outside of him being a Silicon Valley billionaire who runs like hedge funds and private equity and stuff like that. But he is central to a lot of these group chats, apparently. Like, he loves these group chats. So one of the main group chats is called Chatham House, which is named after a think tank in London. It's a giant and raucous signal group chat that forms part of the sprawling network of influential private chats that began during the fervid early days of the pandemic and have fueled a new alliance of the tech bros and the US right wing. That same week, in the Chatham House group chat, Joe Lonsdale and Mark Cuban sparred over affirmative action, and Mark Cuban and Daily Wire founder Ben Shapiro discussed questions of culture and work ethic. I would just say that to anyone who thinks Mark Cuban is a good guy, because he acts as a liberal on Blue Sky and he pretends to love it. When Mark Cuban buys Blue Sky and ruins it, just remember he's in group chats with Ben Shapiro talking about politics. So the constellation of rolling elite political conversations revolved primarily around the venture capitalist Mark Andreessen. Sometimes you can see stuff that starts in the chats become a public thing. So for instance, a podcast debate between Mark Cuban and Vivek Ramaswamy was actually started in one of these chats. And Ben saying, many of the roughly 20 participants I spoke to felt a genuine sentimental attachment to the spaces and believed in their values. One participant in the group described them as a republic of letters, a reference to the long-distance intellectual correspondence of the 17th century. Others often invoked European salon culture. So I found this interesting. So Andreessen saying they're all having private conversations because they weren't allowed to have the public conversation. If it wasn't for censorship, all of these conversations would have happened in public, which would have been much better. So I 100% don't believe billionaires are all having secret group chats because they think there's censorship going on. It's more that they're afraid people will see them for the freaks they really are. Look at Elon Musk and all the things he says about birth rates and shit like that. Imagine what he's been saying to people in these group chats, right? Probably so much worse to what he said in public. And he says some pretty terrible things on Twitter. It's more that billionaires are all freaks. Billionaires are all Jeffrey Epstein. And that's what they're afraid of the public seeing. That's why they seek solace in each other, because they're all freaks, right? Not because there's some sort of censorship against, what, conservative capitalist ideas? You're going to argue that point to everyone? So apparently Mark Andreessen is addicted to these chats. Someone who sat next to him at a conference during this period was in awe as he flipped through his phone from group chat to group chat, responding and engaging with manic speed. Ben saying, I've had a friend or source tell me in wonder that Andreessen was blowing up their phone. His hunger for information was astonishing. One participant in the group chat said, my impression is Mark spends half his life on 100 of these at the same time. Another correspondent marveled. This man should be a lot busier than I am, and I can barely keep up with his group chat. How does he have the time? Yeah, he should be a lot busier. But most billionaires have like the easiest fucking jobs in the world. Elon Musk is apparently working like 24/7, but has time to stream himself playing like video games while sliding into every libertarian woman's DMs. Most billionaires do fuck all because they have a legion of people to run their lives for them, and most of their jobs don't involve much. Venture capitalists sitting on a pile of money have people to do the hard work for them and even do the stuff that maybe they got, rich doing, like financial investment. We've been sold that Silicon Valley is a culture of just people working non-stop. It's more like Elon Musk makes people work for him non-stop because he's just a really shitty human being. Not that Elon Musk himself is slumming it in the Twitter offices 24/7 trying to fix every single problem. That is just not happening. So Mark Andreessen is probably just really fucking lonely and bored. So that's why he's on group chats all the time. So if you're wondering why tech bro billionaires have all seemingly gone far right at the same time, the group chats might be part of the reason why. So in May of 2022, Mark Andreessen asked the conservative academic, more like Nazi Richard Hanania, to make a chat of smart right-wing people. Hanania recalled, as requested, he assembled 8 or 10 people, elite law students and federal court clerks, and added Tucker Carlson. Hanania said that Mark Andreessen was radicalised over time. Hanania said he found himself increasingly alienated from the group and the shift towards partisan pro-Trump politics, and he came to see the chat he'd established as a vehicle for groupthink. A friend of Andreessen said it was Hanania, not Andreessen, who had shifted his politics, and the group now continues without him. So Hanania, just like Richard Spencer, are Nazis who are now pretending to be liberals. So that's why he's saying like, oh, I can't put up with everyone being so pro-Trump, because he's cosplaying as someone who's like a centrist liberal now. So yeah, you can totally understand how these people are like radicalizing themselves. Like if you're in group chats with like Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson, you're basically in group chats with Nazis. And obviously we had here the screenshot I showed you earlier about everyone leaving the chat. And that's when the psychology of group chats comes into it. Because if you have someone like dominating the conversation, especially someone who might be like an academic or a judge or something like that, and you're like a tech, bro billionaire, like maybe you know tech stuff, but you don't know politics, and you have these people talking with authority on your group chat every single day, and it's one you participate in every single day, like Mark Andreessen, obviously you can see how these people can become radicalized. The one good thing about all these group chats like being leaked is that it really dispels the myth that we're ruled by smart people. Like we're ruled by people who earn the success in some way. It's like, no, we're just ruled by really stupid people who might even just be lonely, so they start radicalizing themselves on social media. Like we literally saw this play out in front of the whole world with Elon Musk, who turned himself from like maybe some sort of racist liberal to actually some sort of neo-Nazi, just from being obsessed with Twitter and being on it 24/7. And we're seeing it with that Mark Andreessen, like radicalizing himself, and all the tech bro billionaires from Silicon Valley. They're all becoming Trump sycophants. And not only is it like a grift where they're trying to get in bed better with the Trump administration, like a lot of them are actually buying his bullshit now as well. Like they're actually believing it because they're all idiots when it comes to politics. So they're only listening to these loudmouth conservatives in places like group chats. But yeah, it is depressing increasingly. The fate of our world is being decided in private groups that no one has real access to. The messages disappear. So all of this coordination is going on behind the scenes. And we can't even fight against it because we don't even know who's in league with who. So although Mark Cuban's a liberal and Ben Shapiro's a conservative, they have a channel together where they're talking all the time, right? So even if you say to yourself, well, a Mark Cuban, he'd never go along with Ben Shapiro. Well, they're talking to each other all the time. It's a little something that people know as class solidarity. There's a reason that billionaires and millionaires are all talking in group chats, because they're validating each other and they're doing more business so they can stay as part of the elite and they can coordinate all these things to make our society just act in a way which helps them and gives them like greater power. And you see that with like Elon's chats with the Twitter acquisition, and you see the dystopian nature of how the US government is planning to destroy whole buildings in Yemen because the Houthis threaten Saudi oil and threaten global trade. Like it's just so naked. And I would say the psychology of group chats come into it because instant messenger is stuff you don't give as much thought to. I don't know about you guys, but when I write an email, I read the email a couple times and I think about it. I don't just like shoot it off unless it is someone who's like a close colleague or whatever, right? These people are not thinking a lot about what they're saying, but it affects us even more. So I would like everyone to not be on instant messenger, like coordinating really terrible stuff behind the scenes with no paper trail. I think it just blends the worst of communication together, and it also helps to humanize the outside world, where people like Mark Andreessen, they're even dehumanizing social interaction, where they think they're actually socializing with people by writing text messages to them. Anyway, I thought this was an interesting one. Sorry if it's a bit too long, but let me know what you guys think about wealthy and elite group chats, and thank you for watching.